Hi, you're listening to Engagement Drivers, presented by EveryoneSocial. Each week, we'll share actionable tips, strategies, and success stories that you and your teams can use to steer your brand, social, and employee engagement in the right direction.
Hey everyone, Todd here, Director of Marketing at EveryoneSocial. Another edition of Employee Advocacy Week here for you. I am very excited to introduce Chuck Kabat, VP Digital Channels at Fidelity. Our topic is going to be people and their brands, building employee advocacy in regulated industries. So this is a topic I think we're seeing a lot more regulated industry companies coming to us, those in heavy compliance checks and balances, who are now opening up the doors for not only their executives to be sharing, but employees. And it's a really great time, I think, for everyone to get involved. So we're excited to talk about this. I think there's a lot of other companies in this space who are looking for information or to see how others in the space are doing really well. Fidelity has had a great program so far, and they're continuing to dominate in the space that we see. So very excited, Chuck, for you to be here. Would love for you just to introduce yourself, a little bit about what you do at Fidelity to get us started.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks very much, Todd. As you mentioned, I'm Chuck Kabat. I'm with Fidelity Investments, and I'm from Greater Boston. I've been at Fidelity for 12 years. I've got an education and a background in public relations and communications. And prior to being at Fidelity, I was with a global public relations firm working with professional services firms, including financial services. So I've been doing this for a while. And at Fidelity, I started off in their public relations team for the workplace business, and that is how we sell benefits to employers for their employees around things such as like 401ks would be very popular and what you would know. And I'd also back then, I would teach a lot of employees, especially those that were client facing, about the importance of having a really solid and high quality LinkedIn profile. And it seemed to resonate quite well. And then I would also start coordinating Twitter chats. And we started to realize, you know what, this social media thing works and it's powerful. So that was some of the earlier things that we did and that I did within Fidelity for Social.
Very cool. So when was the first time you were actually introduced to the concept of employee advocacy, and why did it kind of intrigue you personally?
Sure. Somebody got it going about 4.5, 5 years ago. For me, it was 4 years ago when I caught wind of it and was asked to sort of help. And remember we mentioned the LinkedIn profiles. So to me, instantly, I saw the connection and the power that could take place. It was instantaneous, saying, well, LinkedIn profile of an individual who we admire and respect within our organization, what can that person then become sort of as an evangelist for the brand if they're sharing content? And I thought, wow, that advocacy work it's a legitimate term, an advocate. And that's what I started to see. It was quite impactful. And it's interesting to see how you could really get others excited about it too. Granted, it took a while, but once they started to see the power of it and get feedback, both internally and from outside in their professional networks around social, it went well.
Yeah, it's great to hear. I think the other thing, the part kind of two of that question too, is how do you start to convince, Fidelity as a company to actually look into this or want to push it forward? Because, you understood the power of it, but there's always other people involved as well. So kind of curious how you got the team to kind of rally around this, and then maybe any goals or just kind of results you might have seen that you're able to share.
I think those are good questions. If you think about just so far this year, as we've been with EveryoneSocial, we've had more than 30,000 pieces of content, posts that have been shared by our employees as advocates. Can't think of many other tools that can do something like that. So that's pretty powerful. And 94,000 people have clicked on them to like, share, or comment upon those pieces. So when you start having results like that, what you can find is that executives will go, okay, hey, this is working. We do like the results here, but let's learn a little bit more. So what we've been able to do is really show how it evangelizes our brand and its diverse culture by showing the people involved who then show their networks what we want to have said about the firm out there as much as we can. It does a really good job of boosting the profile of the individual, especially on a platform like LinkedIn, sometimes on Twitter as well, but also there's that halo effect that it also does it for the brand. And that's pretty exciting, and you can see those results through the volume of those shares. The second thing too is there's few places you can go to really have a good fight in the war for talent. We all know what's going on right now with the movement of people these days for looking for new jobs, new roles, both internally and from outside your company. And so how do you get their attention? Well, your own employees, your own networks. It's pretty important to use those tools where you can. And some of the successful things we've done is to make sure that our employees that are using the tool mix up the content. Don't just share about Fidelity, but share things that we provide for them that are non-Fidelity, just different thought leadership pieces, stories around workplace culture and how to have a good work from home experience, or how to be better off and present with your family while you're still working from home in these areas too. Third-party articles are very popular that we can get approved and put into the program as well. So all of these things help our employees improve their newsfeed and their networks.
No, and I love that. And that's something that we've been preaching to a lot more of just our customers, but others who are maybe looking to explore the space in financial services or pharma or healthcare, other places with regulated industries. We've been seeing the same thing, right? Mixing up the content, don't always make it so brand heavy.
Right.
Try the different content mediums too, like text only posts or image or GIF posts, things like that. That just mix it up. And there's a huge brand effect. And we're starting to talk about this a little bit too. And we'll probably have a blog post out in a few weeks, not only about the direct traffic that these programs are having, but the indirect traffic that's having on the brand, where even if people aren't having links in every post, if your brand is listed in the headline, people are clicking your profile, they know that these people are working at Fidelity. They know what Fidelity does.
Yeah.
This is helping with the brand impressions, brand trust, and there's indirect traffic happening from that people might come to your product later on or services, right? They're thinking about Fidelity first now. So that's something that's really important. Yeah.
And Todd, you know what else too? We got to make sure the way you present the content to the employee is important as well. So not all things work for all people. So we've done what we feel is a pretty important and good job using the EveryoneSocial groups, what we sometimes call them libraries, where we break them out by people in different regions so that the content applies to them in their region. It's a little bit more personalization around nonprofits and Fidelity Cares, different jobs. And then we also have some retained individuals in business groups that can share content that's specific to them. So it's the presentation of the content, which gets the person excited too.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. So like I said too earlier, we're seeing more regulated industries exploring this. And I think understanding that they're falling behind if they don't start kind of catching up to the social sphere. I mean, things obviously are changing. Audiences expect a lot more from the content they're digesting. So, I think you and I both kind of understand this a little bit, but I'm wondering too, for people who are viewing that might understand, why do you think it's taken so long for these industries to catch up, like financial services, for example?
So there's been a culture of restriction or guidelines, and they're important, these rules and regulations from regulators in FINRA or the SEC upon our industry. They're very, very important to make sure that our businesses act in an appropriate manner. So there's this long-term sort of effect that has taken place where individuals who work within those businesses have said, I can't touch these types of content because it's off limits. And those are things that we teach through both legal and compliance, and also through word of mouth and through education on our company portal. But as those things have changed, you have some long tenured employees who still feel that that's the case. And we like to use the term sometimes they're scared to share. And I get that. There has been some fear around that. So we make sure that today it's all about education, and we'll talk, I'm sure, a bit more about that. But the fears have lingered, and now when the regulations are catching up to today's social, sometimes there's a little bit of a lagging tail there for some of the people involved and what they feel they can do. So the regulations are actually sometimes moving a little bit quicker than individuals.
It's good to hear too. And I think even if with those regulations in place, we've been kind of helping others in the regular industry explore, kind of saying like, look, it doesn't have to be very specific advice. For example, like investment advice, like understandable, there's certifications or licenses of qualified people that should be sharing that. But even others and other teams, it could be as generic as like, hey, 10 reasons why you should be, investing for your retirement. Something simple that's not as regulated, but still provides value to what the company does. And then for employees who are excited to share this kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of that happening too, but it's good to hear that there are some regulations that are kind of moving quicker and that people just need to figure out that this is happening.
Yeah.
So I think along with that too, as you're building a program in these regulated industries, or as Fidelity has done, beyond the regulations or the scared to share, what have been some other challenges that maybe you've seen internally, and kind of how you overcome those challenges to get employees kind of involved in this program?
Yeah, I would say that there's some inconsistency out there. There's complexity, of course, around regulations. We get that. But there's also inconsistency among some of our peer brands or competitors, for example. And it I think is not always an inconsistency and sometimes a misunderstanding. So we'll have an employee or a peer group, say, working with one type of business and they're selling to a certain type of client who will see similar styles of posts that they would like to do, but we're told, or they're told that they cannot. They'll see that type of thing happening out on social and say, hey, somebody's wrong here. Either you are in compliance with Fidelity or they are. And it's not necessarily the case. There could be an educational misunderstanding happening around what is appropriate and what's not. Maybe that brand wants to take a risk in that area, or maybe they have permissions or something. And maybe the cohort of people that are seeing share that type of content have a retained handle where there's a licensing that's happening and a retention for compliance, which makes it so that they can share that piece of content that maybe somebody within our organization could not in that instance.
Cool. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think along with that too, how have you gotten more executive support this? I think with obviously showing that there's, with the shares that you guys have had, there's inherent trust there, but even from the beginning, kind of how to prove that ROI. I think a lot of people are concerned that the board or executives who are in these traditional industries, like you said, kind of don't realize that the regulations might be moving as fast or they're stuck in their old ways. So how can others start to kind of convince their leaders that this is something worth at least testing, if anything?
Sure. Yeah. And you can't hammer home enough the notion of education. You're just going to be educating different markets, just like you're educating associates across the organization on how and why they can share. It's also educating the executive teams on the impact and the value. It's a lot of measurement and metrics that can sometimes be complex, but you can demonstrate that value and that impact by showing examples. That you need to curate those around your organization and continue to ask for those, such as business leads, award promotions or retweets and reshares by members of the media or nonprofits because they saw something that was engaged and your associate base really was excited about something, or being named a top company in a certain region and your employees really amplify that. But then you get feedback from some executives because clients mentioned it. Those types of things don't really have as often a number value on them as they do sort of a qualitative piece. But another thing you really just can't hide from, and it's so important, is the amount of people that see the content and apply to the company or show interest in it. Back to that notion of the war for talent, it's so important to have our employees talking about the company and sharing job opportunities and then showing what that impact is. It's so important with the war for talent and bringing in quality individuals.
Definitely agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing we do is we offer curated content, and that makes it easy for people. So you can show that, look, if you are unclear and you're an executive, you're not sure what to do because you're very busy and you might not have embraced Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever type of platform that you feel is going to work best for you within EveryoneSocial. We make it easy. The platform within EveryoneSocial makes it easy. We bring the content to you. And then another thing I would say that really helps is you learn from others. I've been a member now for a few years of socialmedia.org, and that trade organization has got a great deal of information that confidentially and privately their members share with one another about what works and what doesn't. And you get to celebrate each other's successes and learn from each other's failures. And it has some subgroups in financial services and regulated industries. And I can't even tell you how valuable that is. I suggest things such as that too.
Yeah, I'll echo that too. We're big fans of the social media community there. And our CEO, Cameron Brain, actually has presented a few times, I think, for some private groups into that, which is really awesome. But yeah, we always say too, executive support's really key for the long-term success, even if at the beginning they're kind of hesitant. For a long time, we say, like, when you see your executives leading by example, right, and posting or engaging or saying this is important, we see that people get more excited to be involved in the program, or it encourages others to actually want to join and be like, how can I be a brand ambassador for our company? So I think the executive part is really, really important. So I'm glad that you guys have really taken that, full steam ahead. Yeah. Additionally, too, so I think with this, how can others in the regulated industry really go about these programs? What tips do you have for them to get started? I think you kind of alluded to some of that with the executive support and kind of proving a little bit of the value there. But what would you recommend others who are kind of in this space should do to kind of get that support and start building out a program?
Yeah, I think you need to lead by example, of course, and that's not always about the most senior leaders. That it could be others that you can demonstrate as serious advocates and how it is that they have helped shape some of the change of the story about the company externally. Those examples can be a little hard to find, but you can make sure that they happen. And you can do that with different types of individuals. We've got a thought leadership program here at Fidelity that we're very proud of. It's enterprise-wide, and it covers different types of folks in different business areas. But they don't just talk about their business, but they talk about diversity and inclusion, and making sure that we focus on inclusivity around customers with disabilities and other topics around that really sort of talk about the company. And those examples are things that you can pull into EveryoneSocial, not only for people to share, that we can then highlight the impact of those two through our internal news magazine and online portals. So the more examples you can give, sometimes those and their visual nature, because of social, can be more powerful than numbers and metrics behind them. A lot of leaders and executives are going to need those numbers and metrics, but for your associates to share and get excited and involved, they need to see. And it gets pretty good when you can do it that way. But again, that's hammering that notion of education, just keep it going.
Great. Yeah, I think the education part, like you said, is key. Is just there's so much information, and executives are so busy, and a lot of times they're not understanding a lot of these. So if you can just get to the point real quickly and kind of show the value, there's a much bigger opportunity there for you to actually get started, or at least test out a program, and then prove more of that ROI as you go along. So great. I think one of the other things we're talking about in this chat too is kind of the power of personal brands. And I think that's pretty important for not only employees and executives to understand, because it's a two-way street, right? Employee advocacy, of course, is to help the brand and drive talent and everything else you want to accomplish. But there's a benefit to employees and people who get active in this. So there's probably, again, a little bit of overlap in what we discussed here, but I really want to understand from your perspective, why do you think it's important, that personal brands are big and that people understand the value of their personal brands when it comes to employee advocacy?
Sure. So you become a trusted sort of member of a community, and that community would be your own professional network. And that's a pretty solid reach in a lot of cases. So the more you can build out that brand, the better. Somebody might not always be at the same company too, or they can look back to their alumni groups and pull in more talent to our firm. So making sure that you build out your personal brand, alongside while you're building out Fidelity's brand is key. There's things that people can find out about you on the internet. Simple Google searches will turn up a lot, especially on LinkedIn. So why not own that? Take control of it. Let people know who you are. Become your own best storyteller. Demonstrate the power of your brand and help build it. It's good for you and it's good for the company.
Definitely. So along with that too, what do you think are the important steps for helping employees in these regulated industries really understand the power of their brands, but also to have them a little bit less hesitant, right, to get involved in sharing? Obviously, a program like EveryoneSocial can help, but not everyone might start with us, which is fine, or might want to start it more manual. But from a perspective that you've seen, what are some steps to help people kind of be more open to wanting to share on their own networks?
Yeah, as we've talked about education, and ensure that there's a solid, and be patient, a solid and educational program going along for a matter of months or so that just continues to reinforce why it's okay, how to best do it, and that if you're not sure about creating your own user-generated content within the company's guidelines, consider, please, going to EveryoneSocial. We've made it very simple to get content that already exists, that's been curated and pre-approved, and it's a safe way for you to get started to dip your toes into employee advocacy and building out the brand. There's nothing more powerful than making it easy for somebody. You can start to really see them grow their networks too, and grow their connections, and you can hear and really see a lot of the excitement that some leaders will have.
Yeah, that's great. And I think along with this too, with the executive sharing, I think you gave an example a while ago, but I would love to hear too is, there's a lot of executives who are going to be listening to this too, and I think out there in our Employee Advocacy Week registrants. So I'm excited to get them to, of course, listen to what you're sharing here, Chuck. But what do you think they should know about their brands and social media at work? And do you have any examples of executives at Fidelity that have really seen some success quickly without, originally that might have been hesitant?
So it's interesting. They will ask questions like, why is this important? And you have to remember that back to some of the numbers, we can tell you it's important and we firmly believe it. But what other tool right now, just our first connections of active users on EveryoneSocial is well over 3 million. And so we're going to continue to expand and grow that. But what else gives you that type of reach today? And that reach from your own statements, your own employees. And when they hear that, they're like, wait a minute, what do you, they really want to get a little more clarity around there. And then you talk again to them about that these are trusted business partners, these connections. They're professional networks. They are business decision makers that are reading our content and the content of many of the client-facing associates who are out there. And also their friends and family. And they're people that really care about the company who might say, hey, you know what? They're right. This is a good place. I'd like to work there. I want to become a part of that organization. So the power and the reach of those connections is the number one thing that you can do to communicate and help sort of really sell the concept of the power of employee advocacy, especially upward into the leadership ranks.
Cool. That's great. Yeah. Anything else that you wanted to share with us? Otherwise, we can wrap this up here. I want to make sure everyone can connect with you too. So how can we get in touch with you, have questions about advocacy, or just anything else about what you guys are doing?
So that'd be great if people wanted to follow a little bit more of what we've got to say here at Fidelity. You can follow myself or reach out to me. I'm happy to answer some questions. You can find me at Chuck Kabat on LinkedIn. My last name is spelled K-A-B-A-T, and I'd be happy to share some of our learnings and help you build a good opportunity as well for yourselves through employee advocacy.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Chuck. Really appreciate your time here. I hope everyone out there enjoyed the content, understood exactly what Chuck was trying to share. Again, we think these regulated industries really need to be involved in social media at work. A lot to be processed and to do, but we have all the information you need. If there's anything else out there that you guys need from us, let us know. Enjoy the session, though. Thanks all.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with more engagement insights. Want to know how EveryoneSocial can provide you with the tools needed to keep everyone at your company connected, informed, creating, and sharing? Visit EveryoneSocial.com to learn more.